G'day golfers. Ever found yourself redirecting blame and making excuses after having an absolute shocker on a golf course? I know that I have. Range was closed, I was a little cold, didn't warm up, I hit it in those 3 old divots. Then we have the podcast for you. We focus on how to fundamentally own your swing. Strike it pure and consistently shoot in the 70s. Be it if you're a weekend hack, retired and playing daily, a school phenom or a tour professional. We present and discuss facts and physics pertaining to golf, trying to keep our ego and opinion at bay. We dispel myths such as keep your head down, bend your knees, or my all-time favourite, game improvement irons. So stop drinking that mythical Kool-Aid and have a sip of ours. I think you'll find it both inspiring and refreshing. I'm Scott Young, founder of Swing, PGA professional and ex-tour player. Welcome to Pivot the Path. G'day golfers and welcome to Pivot the Path, the 153rd Open Championship. What an open it was. I was absolutely glued to the television. In my opinion, and obviously today's a recap of the Open for those who missed it, in my opinion, not since 2000 Tiger's win at the US Open by 15 shots it was. Not since that win have we had such a triumphant Open tournament dominated by one Scottie Scheffler. So we'd love to talk about that in the improvement pivot point, because very proudly, since the inception of this brand Swing and obviously our podcast, Pivot the Path, and manner in how we discuss what we'd like to do with our brand with you guys, not since that 2000 Open win has someone been so dominant. And very proudly, we've talked about process since the inception of Swing. And one of the reasons I built this bricks and mortar was I believe there was a better way to get golfers to own their swing and play scratch golf. And it's less about technique. It's less about getting all the fancy equipment. It's more about owning the process and having a set of circumstances that deliver that to you. And so we're going to talk about that in the improvement pivot point, but suffice to say, I thought it was one of the best majors in decades. So I hope you caught it because it was really cool. And just before we get on to news from the fairways, Rosie and I took our 3 girls to Zach Bryan at MetLife Stadium. Now, quick shout out to Zach Bryan, because he created an environment for us 5 to have the greatest night we've had as a 5 watching any live music or entertainment. It was unbelievable. And then I hope off stage he's as honourable as he was on stage. Look, the kid was 8 years in the Navy, so he's got to have a pretty good backbone. We had a great time. I hope he is as honourable as what he presented. He was the most lovely entertainer. He talked about himself. He introduced himself. And then the last song of the night, Revival, which is one of his big songs, he spent 2.5 hours on stage, and then he makes point to introduce every single band member, bit of who they are, where they're from. And it was certainly, and I've seen a fair bit of live music, it was the best single song I've ever seen live. And it went for about 25 minutes. He had 60,000 people singing. And he just, in a really sincere way, introduced his band that made his platform grow. And dude, shout out to you. It was an unbelievable night. It was brilliant. And then all the police officers that made it safe, and how we got out of it. We drove so the kids could crash in the car because we had about a 2-hour drive back. It was just awesome. So anyone who's in that whole genre of putting on live music, thank you, because we had a great time. News from the fairways, F1, we didn't have an event, and I just had a bit of a recap. And Belgium's the next F1, and Aussie Oscar Piastri is crushing it. He's number 1 on the way to winning his first World Championship. So shout out Oscar and McLaren. They have done very, very well. We only had one event, and this is very cool. Wire to Wire in the Corn Ferry by Chandler Blanchett. Kid's got 2 babies. He's made about 400 grand since coming on tour in 2020. So that's nearly 5 years. And 400 grand, that's not a lot of coin with 2 kids on the way. And he's just won his first PGA Tour Corn Ferry event. So Chandler, you can do it. You just proved you can do it. Wire to wire, that's no small mean feat. So we hope that I think 29, yeah, 29. I hope you've proved to yourself you can do it and then go on to better things. So we're so happy for you, mate, and your young family. That's very cool. So on the greens for me was a little different this week. All my staff were away, so I hunkered down and worked 7 days all day, every day, and it was kind of cool. And then so Sunday I had a day off and I was watching the Open, and we use OnForm as my teaching platform. So what that means is every lesson I give, I have my iPad and we do in real time videos. We create videos, any mobility or stability that Maddie has for our customers goes onto OnForm. If they're on the golf course in the Bahamas, they take a video on their phone, put it on their OnForm app, and then I can give them a lesson in real time. And it's just our platform of teaching. So thank you, Gear, who owns OnForm. Brilliant platform. So Colt comes up on his OnForm app and goes, oh, he's got a very deep voice, our son. He goes, oh, Papa, I just got myself hitting a forehand slice on video. Can we look at it? And I'm like, oh, sure, buddy. So then he gets his iPad. And then for the next 10 minutes, I explain that a tennis racket, which actually is pickleball racket, and actually on that, pump the brakes a bit, I grew up in Sydney, and at Knox we played sparee. So sparee for us was basically on a court about 20 feet long. The net was about a foot high, and now that's turned into pickleball, fast forward 30 years. And so I've been playing sparee for years, but you now call it pickleball and it's on a half tennis court. Anyway, so he's got a pickleball racket and Colt comes in and goes, oh, Papa, what sort of shot am I playing here? And so whilst I'm watching the Open, thinking about how we're going to do Pivot the Path, that morphs into an hour and a half long session where I then explain what a slice action is in a pickleball paddle. Colton then gets the launch angle that the racket then creates. We then talk about the spin it creates in a shot. And then that morphs into what happens when that tennis ball, because he was using a tennis ball, what happens when that tennis ball hits the tennis court? Does it backspin and slow down compared to a top spin, as I was taught, low to high with top spin? And what that tennis ball does with spin and what that tennis ball does when it hits the ground. So I'm watching the Open. I say, hey, why don't you go and get yourself hitting a top spin? Then I grab his hand with the paddle and I explain how to hit a top spin. Bugger me if he doesn't go away for about 40 minutes. And look, Rosie's going to kill me, but we have a house of sport, right? Our whole family's sports nuts. So whether it's good or bad, we play tennis inside. And look, Valentina's got a lacrosse ball up on one of our walls. I mean, sometimes these houses in our community they've got priceless artworks, this and that. That's not our house. Our house is paddle, tennis, ping pong. So anyway, so while Valentina's paddle lacrossing, Colton at the age of 7 is getting himself on video hitting perfect little top spins, backhands and slices. So after about 40 minutes, took him about half an hour to master the top spin, he comes back. For the next 25, 30 minutes, my 7-year-old son gets the concept and we use the OnForm to slow-mo of what a top spin is actually doing at impact, what a top spin backhand's doing, what a slice forehand, what a slice backhand's doing, the resultant launch angle of the racket, the spin, and then how it reacts to the golf ball. Well, that morphs into hips before hands is a top spin feel in tennis, which produces a draw ball flight. Slice paddle is a cut shot, which is a hands before hips cut spin. So my 7-year-old son gets it. And Valentina, who's 11, she gets it. And so for about an hour and a half, completely unscripted, I didn't have anything to do with it, they are fascinated how the racket moves up and over compared to down and how that correlates to a cut spin and a hook spin. So the point is, I teach some golfers in here who are in their middle ages about how to hit fades and draws, but they actually don't get the concept of what spin it is on a golf ball. And it's funny that at 7 and 11, Valentina and Colt get it. And that was really cool. So we're going to play golf this week at some point. And I'm really fascinated to see, because they now get what the ball's doing in the air and how the process is created, I think they'll actually get it a little easier. So that's kind of pretty cool. I'll resort back to that. Our improvement pivot point, the 153rd Open Championship, Royal Portrush, which I've played. Great track. Let me say that again. 153 years this event's been playing. We talk about elite sport. I've been very proud that I've been around elite sport for, 30 years. And often parents, whether it's on a lacrosse pitch or a basketball court, parents think they've got their 1%er and their 1% is going to the NBA. And I get emails every week, can you work with my son or daughter? They're a 1%er, they're going to the PGA Tour. And I'm very pragmatic and very positive and say, oh, this is great. Bring your son or daughter in. Let's have a chat. And it's actually usually the first ones. Let's have a chat. Let's have a cup of coffee and talk about, what your goals are. To be that 1%er, and I've come across about, 10 in my life. To be that 1%er, you've got to be a rare individual. So in preparing to talk about today, and I'm really excited to talk about today, I kind of came up with this Venn diagram, right? Where you have two circles. And in one circle for an athlete, you've got talent, actual talent of producing a golf shot or a tennis shot or being able to row better than anyone else, the actual physical talent. On the other side of the Venn diagram, you've got the mental aptitude. And there's been a lot of amazing players who have had one of each. So if I think of Greg Norman, he's got the physical talent. So if we get back to that 1%, that sports professional that we watch on TV, you've got the 1%ers who make professional sport their living, and then you've got the world champions, and there's a huge difference. So if I look at the 1%ers, if we look at a Venn diagram where two circles interact, we've got physical talent, and then we've got mental toughness, attitude that is very, very hard to teach. Leighton Hewitt he worked extremely hard, but he was quite short. He was like a Michael Chang. Michael Chang won the French. Leighton won a couple of majors, well, Grand Slams. Those guys were mentally tough, physically brilliant, but they lacked a little bit of, in their case, size to probably be that Roger Federer, Djokovic, Ayrton Senna, Niki Lauda, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan. So those last 6, 7 names are the epitome of brilliance, right? But on the periphery of that, we've got the Greg Normans, the Peter Thompsons, who were brilliant, but one could argue never lived up to their potential, combining physical and mental. Not since the 2000 Open has someone been so dominant as Scottie Scheffler. And very proudly, he appears to have cracked what it is to be the greatest, one of the greatest athletes of all time. And before everyone, this is my opinion, before everyone gets on the bandwagon and says, well, he's only won 4 majors, I get it. But at the age of 29, for the first tournament since the 2000 US Open, there's a different approach in professional golf. And I think a lot of pundits are going to be talking about the Open. And I'm very proud, and I kind of almost guarantee you that I don't think anyone's going to be talking about it how we do here at Pivot the Path. Because for whatever reason, I appear to see the game in just slightly a different light than most. And since we started Swing and started Pivot the Path, I believe that every single golfer, if they choose in every moment that they handle a golf club to be better than when they started, i.e. if they have an hour of time to practice, what Rosemary and I have said from the get-go is that we are providing a facility and a platform, and soon to be an online platform, where you can be better than when you started for the time period you've got to practice. And Scottie Scheffler exemplifies that. And as everyone talks about his win this week, and the Golf Channel to me is completely nauseating because they lose the point. Scottie Scheffler, for the first time since Tiger's win in the 2000 Open, took hold of a sport and elevated it. He transcended the sport in a way that I don't believe's done before. Look, we got 4 kids. We tell them to be better than everyone else in a decision in a moment of time and try to be your absolute best given any moment. Own your swing is not a motto that we have here at Swing itself. It's a motto that Rosemary and I try to live behind. In every moment, be the best you can. Why? Because you've only got one shot at this life. Don't be at your deathbed and you can think, oh, I could have done better. We try to give everything that we possibly can in any given situation, whether it's our 15-year-old with peer pressure, whether it's Colt on a Sunday morning actually working out what spin is. Own your swing is something that we believe in. You should be as good as you could possibly be in any moment. And I think the commentators and the golf industry broadly actually don't get what Scottie Scheffler has just done the last week. And I've got some illustrations to show you that. So anyway, let's backpedal. Start of the week. They're like, Scottie, what does the Open mean to you? You haven't won one. You've won 3 majors. What does this week mean to you? And to paraphrase him, he basically said, mate, nothing really. It doesn't define who I am as a person. Being a good husband, being a good father, being good to my local community, whether it's his coaches and his sports psychs, whatever that's what defines Scottie Scheffler. And it was kind of everyone made a little bit of noise. And some of the commentators on the Golf Channel said, oh, we've had a little sneak peek. But listening to the commentary, they heard what Scottie said, but they didn't really listen to it. And I really listened to it because it's what Rosie and I have worked so hard and continue to work hard to bring into swing. Everyone can play even par golf and break 75, 76 most days. If I look back on my trip to Ireland, I let the situation get better than me. And I was with 10, 12 mates, some I hadn't met before from the UK, but I had 6 or 7 mates who I'd kind of been in the periphery of my life since I was about 8. And if I be honest, as the only golf pro in the group and the best golfer, I kind of beat my chest and I wanted to show Cookie and Boogs how well I played. And I put too much pressure on myself. And so looking back, I should have taken a step back as Scheffler did this week. And I just cannot understate how brilliant this week was if you actually look at the process. Scottie Scheffler gave us a glimpse of how to control this game and in life more generally. And he basically said, and I'll say it again, golf doesn't define me. So the Golf Channel commentator said, well, look, it's so easy when you're a gazillionaire and you've got 60 million in the bank to say that it doesn't define you. But again, that doesn't really show me that they listened to what he said. When someone as so emphatically says, like Scheffler did, you guys don't get it. The golf tournament and the golf results and the majors doesn't move my needle for enjoyment or for my gauge of clarity of success as a person. It does as a golf professional, but the golf professional doesn't define who Scottie Scheffler is. Scottie Scheffler defines who Scottie Scheffler is. And that is so powerful and something that I wish you guys could really take to heart if you want to own your swing and control your golf results. When I went to Ireland, if I had that attitude where I had enough practice to play okay golf, I hadn't played a ton of golf, but I didn't, and I let the environment of I'll prove these guys that I'm the best golfer, and I could have played better. What I'm trying to say is that Scottie Scheffler practices so hard that he knows deep down that he can play any shot for any given time with perfection. So I'll say it again. It's Scottie's process that allows him to not be defined by his results. And what Scottie did, and he didn't allude into this, but this is what we do in here, and I'm really proud, and not for 1 minute saying that we're on the same level as him, but we're saying the same message and have done so since the doors open. Own your process and process bring results. So what I wanted to do in our improvement pivot point was really break down how he won. Scottie knows, and he has said pretty well at every press conference, my lead up and preparation is all I am focused on. He is laser focused on being the most prepared, having the most time on the practice fairway, hitting the most balls in the shots that he's going to play, so that when he comes up to a golf tournament, he knows his preparation is perfect, which is what we say in here. When you're in here, Leave after a session better than you arrived. I'm trying to every week tell players, don't worry about the ball flight. Worry about the math and the process. Come from the inside, face less than path. If you're hitting a little butter cut, come from the outside, face less than path. Make sure your low point's in front of the ball. Face, path, low point. That's a process. And if you control that process, you'll play great golf shots. When you've got a good pre-shot routine, you create an environment where you can play your great golf shots. So let's get back to Scottie. Because he's not defined by the moment or the golf shot or the tournament or the major, he's free to know that he can play any shot that he needs to play with a free mind and with absolute relaxation, because all he's been able to do is create a moment in time for 15 seconds, 12 seconds is his pre-shot routine, to pull the trigger with a free mind only focused on what that shot feels like. So even the commentators, and Kevin Kisner's a guy I've played some golf with on Hooters Tour and Nationwide Pre-Curing way back when. Great guy, Kev, wonderful man. But when Dan Hicks and Kevin Kisner were talking about it, and I kind of quote here, Dan Hicks said, well, it's a shame and we're not surprised that Rory didn't live up to the expectation of winning his local major at Portrush, being a Northern Islander. And I thought, buddy, you don't get what and this was on Sunday night, a week after his press conference. The industry doesn't get what Scheffler's trying to tell you. There's no expectations. There's no coming into an expectation, because that's labeling. And when you label a golf shot or a golf hole or a tournament or expectations, the pressure put on anyone is very hard to live up to. And when Hicks and Kev were talking about the pressures on Rory for the week, it illustrated to me how actually so far removed from what Scheffler's saying and to what they're hearing. The sooner we as athletes can own a process, and I had the exact same conversation with Damo and Paul at Madison Golf Club the week prior. We walked up to the 15th hole and they said, oh, this is the hardest hole. They've instantly labeled a golf hole far harder than hitting it from A, tee shot, to the middle of fairway, B, switching off. Walk up, find the ball in the middle of the fairway, hit it from A, middle of fairway, to B, the green. It's something that I haven't mastered, don't get me wrong. But what Scheffler did for me on the week, and where I think, without being arrogant, the most of the golf industry don't seem to get, is Scheffler has managed to compartmentalize every golf shot as it is. It's a golf shot, irrespective of position in a field, money on the line. You know, this poor bugger who just won his first Corn Ferry event with 2 kids on the way, who's earned 60 grand for the last five years. It's very hard to say, well, okay, mate, I need money, so this tournament's important for me. That's not what Scheffler's saying. What Scheffler's been able to do is compartmentalize his mind to play every shot just like a golf shot. Let me give you an illustration. So on the 16th, 230 par 3, they said it was their signature hardest hole. Rory gets up there. He needs to hit it to about 20 foot to put some pressure on Scheffler, misses the green. Goddard gets up there. He's within 3. Needs to hit the green 20 feet to put pressure on Scheffler. He plays a little butter cut. He hits a little double cross draw. The point is, if I gave those guys 10 golf balls on the 16th at Portrush and said, can you hit the green to 20 feet? I'd bet you 9 out of 10 times they'd do that with their eyes closed. But given the circumstances and the situation and the tournament and the major online, and Rory shot 61 as a 16-year-old, and Kev Kisner's saying, well, he's got to prove to himself he can do it again. Labeling. It's no different to when we're walking up on the 15th tee, obviously on a bigger scale, and Damo says, oh, this is the hardest hole. He's already labeled the fact that he's given himself more pressure to produce on that hole. The whole podcast and my entire brand and creating non-offset golf clubs is that you can own your swing. How to own your swing? I didn't own my swing in Ireland. I wanted to beat my chest and prove how good I was compared to my mates. I didn't need to do that. Scottie Scheffler then hits 16 to about 18 feet, misses the birdie putt by a fraction. Scheffler is, for the first time since Tiger's dominance, but in a very different way because we know how flawed Tiger was. Scheffler appears to be an athlete both on the golf course and off the golf course. Norman wasn't great off the golf course. Tiger wasn't great off the golf course. Scheffler's the first athlete who appears to be on the golf course and off the golf course the same person. And how I believe he's doing it, I certainly would, is leveraging his whoop. Here's what I think they've done. And this might be bullshit, but here's where I think we go. I think they've got someone on video videoing Scheffler's entire round of golf. I think they then parallel that to his whoop. And they're looking at his emotional arousal and his heart rate. And I wouldn't be surprised whether they've videotaped his entire 4 rounds. They then have his heart rate parallel to his video, and they're watching his heart rate go up and down. And they're saying, if he hit a bad shot, how did he deal with that heart rate raise? And then what did he have to do to get it back to where his level is? And they've worked out where he plays his best golf, which is a learned skill. I know when I was playing with the boys in Ireland, I was nervous over some shots as everyone's watching and judging because I didn't play the shot in the moment. What I should have done was say, Youngie, you've hit 4,000 3-woods left or right breeze, just play the shot. And one thing that Scheffler has appeared to do, in my opinion, the first time probably since Nicklaus, and I didn't know Nicklaus and I wasn't old enough to understand how he plotted his way around a golf course. Scheffler is the epitome of own your swing and be present. Because what he's been able to do from a macro is not label the event, the tournament, the shot, the moment. He just knows that I have to get it from point A to point B, and I've played and I've practiced that 1,000 times so I can perform that. So our improvement pivot point is you don't have to buy a whoop, get a video and cross-reference golf shots, arousal, emotional level, heart rate, and get you down to where you need to be your baseline. I think that's what they're doing. They've realized because they never talk about his whoop, he hides it like others, but it's so important. But that's how a professional, and that's what I would do if parents come to me and say, I want to get my kid on PGA Tour. So that's the next level. How do we do it? And how do you own your swing? Play every shot, irrespective whether it's the hardest hole. Don't label anything. There's no club champs. There's no important rounds with a boss. Come in here, own your swing, face less than path, and when you play golf, play a shot from A to B. And if you have the mental control to do that, I guarantee you'll play your best golf. You don't have to bring the best talent. You don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to hit it the furthest. Rory's got the best golf swing since sliced bread, but he doesn't have the mental control that Tiger had, and we know that Tiger was a flawed character, that for the first time I've had a glimpse, and I think Scheffler could be one of the greatest golfers, if not the greatest golfer of all time, including Bobby Jones. Why? Because he played golf from A to B and can compartmentalize that like no athlete I've ever seen. So have a really good look at his press conference. Understand that you can choose to do A to B. That's my goal for the next couple of weeks. Dumb it down. I'm playing golf from A to B irrespective of the shot, the tournament, the US Open pre-Q, whatever it is. And I've got a choice to do that, and you will too. And you will absolutely own your swing if you compartmentalize it, break it down. Our goal is to get it from point A to point B with no labeling. There's no hard holes, there's no hardest hole, and there's no club champs. It's just a round of golf. Beauty golfers, you can absolutely own your swing with the work you put into your game off the golf course. Newsletter drops Friday. Thanks for sharing the podcast. Just like it, share it to everyone else because I think it's a little bit unique and certainly is a bit of a recap for the 153rd British Open. We'll see you next week. Cheers.